someone who does get along quite well with John Tortorella, Cam Atkinson, Charlie, and you wrote an article about Cam Atkinson today to kick off your season review series.
Yes. All for diehards only.
Yeah, diehards only. Make sure you go to allphly.com.
I've been doing these dating back to my time at Broad Street Hockey. Yeah. I made it very much a thing at The Athletic. These are very in-depth deep dives with analytics, with the stats that Corey Schneider tracks, and then just deep dives into the entire season. So these are certainly worth, in my opinion, worth the diehard subscription.
It's worth the subscription right there. Forget everything else you get. Who cares
and also,
about that?
In this case, I wanted to do I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that the way, and I've always done it this way, the way I do these season review pieces is I try to do, the first players I do every year are the ones that I don't think are necessarily going to be here by mid-July because I would rather get them done now while they are still plausibly going to be on the team next season.
I was just going to ask you about the selection of Atkinson first and whether it was because he's interesting, like there's just a lot to get to, or if you think if I wait a couple weeks, it might be irrelevant.
That is exactly why.
Simply alphabetical order.
No, it's
okay.
number two.
Okay.
Like last year, one of the first ones I did was Ivan Provorov because I thought to myself, let me get this done now before he gets traded.
Smart.
Because I think he might get traded. Like the other guys who are probably further up the list this year, guys like Scott Lawton. Do I think he's definitely getting traded? No. Do I think it's more likely? Am I going to prioritize doing Scott Lawton season review over Owen Tippett's? Yeah, I think I might.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Owen Tippett ain't going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere.
The Atkinson, and just his season was so interesting, maybe not from a positive standpoint, but his season was interesting.
It was an interesting season.
And what happens next is very interesting. And today we got a tweet from Darren Dreger about the potential future of Cam Atkinson. Dreger tweeted, the Flyers continue to explore options around veteran Cam Atkinson. San Jose has trade interest, but sources say Atkinson isn't keen on a move to the Sharks. Philly will eat a good chunk of the final year of his contract. Buyout is also an option, as is keeping him in the mix. I don't know how much keeping him in the mix is an option.
It's a theoretical option.
It's a theoretical option that they can say if the team is like, we are going to give you nothing. You're going to cover some of his salary and give us a second-round pick for for taking him. Nah, we'll just hang on, thanks. But if you're considering buyout, it's well, what do you mean you're going to keep him? If you're willing to pay him to go away,
well, it's on the table.
Look, it's a possibility.
I am of the opinion that I think this ultimately ends in a Cam Atkinson buyout, but I don't think they have entirely ruled out the possibility of keeping him because what the hell? Maybe he'll bounce back.
Now, from Cam Atkinson's perspective, he has a 10-team no-trade list.
Right.
You would assume moving across the country to the last place team is one of the reasons you'd be like, yes, I am putting them on my list.
I honestly suspect it's probably the move more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because, he obviously has some roots in Philly. He has a lot of roots in Columbus.
Yeah.
And I do not know if he would have much interest in uprooting his entire family for a year to have them hang out on the West Coast right before he probably retires.
And then maybe get traded at the deadline again.
My guess is that probably a lot of the teams on that list are West Coast, west half of the country types of clubs, because probably wants to stay close to home. I mean, guy's 35 years old. He's got a family. There's other concerns here.
His neck probably hurts.
It's not like this is Mike Richardson, Jeff Carter, where it's like, we're gonna go party out in Cali. Cam Atkinson is a family man. At this point, he's not. That's not a selling point for him the way it would have been in his 20s.
And just from his perspective, it's like, man, you're gonna trade me to a team a last place team on the other side of the country. Buy me out. Let me just go choose.
Let me find someone.
And that's his trade protection. It's negotiated. Good for him. I wouldn't do that. Oh yeah, trade me to San Jose. Nah, I think I'm good. I think I'm all set on that. You just go ahead and do that little buyout, and I'll go sign wherever the hell I want. Or get a PTO, whatever his situation is going to be.
I think he would get signed by somebody for a JVR deal, like the one he signed with Boston. The thing that makes this tough for the Flyers is that, number one, there is a lot of mutual respect between the Flyers and Cam Atkinson. And Cam Atkinson is a very well-respected player around the league. So there is an incentive for the Flyers to do him right. And what Cam Atkinson wants, understandably so, he's a competitor. This is a guy who's 5'8", he was a sixth-round pick, turned himself into a 40-goal guy. He has a lot of belief in his ability to prove doubters wrong. And there are a lot of doubters right now. What Cam Atkinson wants this season is one final opportunity to show that he's not cooked and that he can still be a good NHL player. The problem with Philadelphia is that I don't know if there's going to be room, because you look at it, you've got Farabee, Konechny, assuming he stays, which I think he will. You've got Tippett. So those guys are locks. And then you got Forster. So there's four guys that are locks for the top nine as wingers. You got two more spots. Bobby Brink needs to play in the top nine. Okay, he just does. He does. Because if he's going to develop, you want to be playing him in a role where he can develop.
Consistent.
He's an NHL caliber player. He's got to be there. Okay? Then you've got Michkov. We don't know if Michkov's coming over or not, but it's clearly a possibility. The possibility is out there. If Michkov were to come over next season, in terms of natural right wingers ahead of Cam Atkinson on the depth chart, you would have Konechny, Forster, Tippett, Brink, Michkov.
How many lines do they typically run?
I think there's only 4, and only 3 of them actively try to score goals. So it comes down to a numbers game. Like, yes, can Tippett and Konechny play the left if necessary? Sure, they can. Brink probably can too. Michkov is a puck wizard, so he could probably play anywhere if he really wants to. But ideally, you want to be developing Bobby Brink on his good side. He's a natural righty. Ideally, you want to be developing Michkov on his good side because he's like the future of your freaking franchise. And Konechny, like, you're going to be paying him $9 million plus. Like, do you really want to be moving him around a ton?
And
you want to be getting the most out of him by playing him in his most comfortable spot.
Just in terms of positional fluidity, like, I want Konechny over on the right side. That's where he's comfortable. That's where he's a skilled player, but I don't see him, like you called Michkov a puck wizard.
Yeah.
That's not
that's not the way I view
That's
Konechny
not
either.
what Konechny is.
True.
And
agreed.
I can see Brink even being a more natural, like they tried it a little with Forster and Tippett to set up one-timers, and that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. But I always just think of Giroux playing left wing because he's so comfortable on his backhand. And like that seems like a natural transition for Brink, not to compare the two. Like one's borderline Hall of Famer and the other one's second-round pick, who we'll see. But like I just see a overlapping skill set where like distributing back to the point and finding guys on the backhand and being able to go both ways. I think the left side makes maybe most sense for Bobby Brink, but again, these guys are all right wingers.
Yeah, they're all right wingers. And then Cam Atkinson is also a right winger.
And it's Cam too.
So if Cam Atkinson wants a chance to prove that he is still an NHL caliber top 9 scoring winger, that he can still, and he knows he's not what he used to be, but he thinks he can still be a 20-goal, 40-point guy who's a perfectly fine guy in your middle six. That's what he thinks he can be. And he wants to prove that. I don't know if there is going to be room for him to get a chance to prove that on this team. And I think everyone involved, Atkinson, Tortorella, Briere, they all know it.
This is just not where we are.
Like the Flyers need to be focusing on developing guys like Michkov and developing guys like Brink, and even continuing to develop guys like Owen Tippett. Like Owen Tippett, the hope is that he has another gear. You want to be using him in a ton of minutes. Like Cam Atkinson cannot be taking away minutes from these guys in the top 9 because you want to do him a solid. So how do you do him a solid? You find him a new home. There's 2 ways you can do that. Way 1 is explore trades. It's difficult because he's got a big cap hit. Even if you retain 50%, it's still close to $3 million. If Cam Atkinson hits free agency, is he getting a 1-year, $2.9 million contract? I don't think so.
I'd be very surprised.
So if you're going to trade him, most likely you're going to have to include a sweetener or take something back, both of which I assume the Flyers would rather not do. That's why I think a trade is unlikely. Then you add in the fact that he has the 10-team no trade. Makes it even tougher. Not impossible, just tougher, as you're seeing with this San Jose rumor. That's why I think this ultimately ends in a buyout, because both sides know he doesn't really fit here anymore. The Flyers do want to clear up some cap space because they'd rather not use LTIR this season if possible. And he just doesn't fit. Like I don't see it. That's where I'm at with Atkinson. I'm curious to see how this ends, but I think it ultimately ends in a buyout, and we're not going to know if it's going to end in a buyout until at least until 48 hours after the final ends, because that's when the buyout window opens and it closes on June 30th. So we're going to have some time. I just think it ends in a buyout. But hey, if they can find a trade partner, if Don Waddell decides he wants Cam Atkinson to mentor the kids in Columbus, and maybe there's a fit.
That's the obvious. If there's going to be a trade, I think that's the only likely landing spot for him, is back where he wants to be. And a place that respects him and maybe would want to see him. Okay, we do know he can be that guy for us because he was before.
Yeah, and he would be happy to take that role.
Absolutely.
Also, there would be enough space in that lineup where he could play in the top 9.
Do you think... Let's just create this scenario for a second, and then we'll get to the stuff you actually want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
We have Columbus' second-round pick either this year or next year. It's up to them. We wipe that clean. Is that worth not covering any of his salary, a second-round pick?
No.
You would not surrender that asset?
I wouldn't, because to me
neither.
I would rather just eat the contract or deal with a 2-year buyout rather than, because I'm not saying the Flyers are destined to get a superstar with that second-round pick. I am saying that it's going to be a pretty high second-round pick, whether it's
Columbus
this year
stinks.
or next.
Yeah.
Columbus ain't going to be getting much better this year, I don't think, even if they keep the pick and give it up next year. And do I think it's definite that the Flyers are going to find a superstar there? Or even an NHL player? Of course not. But you look at Dallas, and they're digging up guys like Logan Stankoven and Jason Robertson with early second-round picks. I want the Flyers to have as many chances possible to luck into a guy like that.
Why not? You need darts.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, like, what exactly it might take to get this done. But yeah, I think I'd rather buy him out than surrender an asset, even if it's an asset that's just like part of something else that we don't even know if we're going to get this year or next year, and you can just be like, keep it.
I would do it if San Jose, if what was on the table was like, we'll take Atkinson at 50% retention if you toss us a 5th-round pick, I'd be like, fine, whatever. It's a 5th-round pick. Ideally, I'd like to keep as many darts, but like once you get past the 3rd round, then it's really, you're just throwing friggin' darts. I would do that. Anything higher than a 3rd-round pick, I'll just keep him the year or buy him out and deal with the second-year buyout. That's my personal opinion, because I think if the Flyers are in a rebuild, they should not be wasting prime assets. I view the first 3 rounds of the draft as prime assets.
Especially on a guy with an expiring contract.
Exactly.
Like, at the end of the day, it is just one more year if you choose to go that route.
We all silly like the mayor.